What to do, man. Alright, couldn't hurt. See what deals are out there, maybe see, what the Switch is cooking for this year or whatever it is that I haven't played yet. Let's see. No, I replayed that one. Replayed that one too many times. Yeah, I'm not looking forward to playing that game again. Buggy, debatable. Maybe. Oh, this one looks fun. Wait a minute. Doesn't this one have DLC? DLC. Hey, wait a minute. Hey, I know what we could talk about today. DLCs! You can dread it, run from it, but your wallet will know its impending doom's approaching. Downloadable content, or as our small smooth brains like to call it as DLC, is certainly a thing that has sparked discourse amongst the gaming community of today in both good and worse ways you honestly can't even imagine. But hey now, we just started the video, so there's no need to stress that moment just yet. Nevertheless, the concept of DLC is something that for the past decade or so had added a level of content for many video game franchises that we know and love. They had a means of providing a new and refreshing advance in gameplay for players to experience, and all the while ensure that they come back to their favorite franchises they 100% completed after nearly dying from 3 straight all-nighters because they were just so damn good. Look, Xenoblade Chronicles 3 really be hitting different at 3 AM. And that's kind of the way we view games of today that have released and are going to release down the line by means of a DLC potential. Will this next Pokemon game have a DLC expansion pass to cover more ground for what's to come in this generation it already released in? Who will enter as part of a fighting package deal in the next fighting game, be it Tekken, Street Fighter, Dragon Ball FighterZ, or even Smash back in the day? When will they even patch the game and provide us constant updates to ensure people still want to play Mario Strikers Battle League? My point being with this intro segment is that DLCs are now a way of life in the gaming market, and that at some point we all ask the question of if a certain game we enjoy playing at its base will get a hands down the line with some price tag attached to it. It is merely the new mode of handling game development that we all accept and kinda just assume automatically, but then that's where the big issues come in line with this kind of stuff. DLCs are great to have for games, there's no doubt about that, but then when you see time and time again that they're often the result of fixing games that were supposed to have a full package deal now suddenly going from $60 to now $90 for content that should have been in the game to begin with, then that's where you lost me and my wallet. Wait, where's my wallet? And this is where I'm sure you've heard that opinion lying around somewhere that DLC nowadays are merely a fixed gesture of adding stuff into a game that was originally supposed to have said contents in it upon release. Of course, not every game has done this in the past, but as of recent memory though, many have begun to take their dip into that DLC pool and suddenly drown in it when they release games half-assed and say, "Oh, but I can fix it later." Yeah, it's not a fun idea to think about, but yet it happens, and for those who already know where I'm gonna be Ace Attorney objection finger pointing to, yeah, you best believe I will mention him in this conversation when it comes to the DLC problem. And yeah, I'm looking at you, Square Enix and Nintendo. Thought you think I would've noticed your asses? Well, really, it's mostly Nintendo. I'm just being dramatic here for obvious reasons. I can't really think of another company that would do the same thing these guys do. Okay, well maybe Bethesda and Activision, but I don't want to go that far just yet. The reason I stated Square Enix was mainly because of how they handle past IPs and ultimately created mixed bag results in the end because of these decisions. The perfect example in my book was the way they handled both Kingdom Hearts 3 and Final Fantasy 15 in terms of their content seemingly feeling so lackluster when compared to the previous entries in the past. These guys just didn't feel like full package deals when released, and with Final Fantasy 15 especially, I honestly have no idea what the hell the director of the game was even doing with what was essentially a Nomura IP to begin with. Like, this entry bombed hard in terms of selling the idea of what was basically a trip with the bros, and trust me, they already tried selling that idea with both an anime series and a movie, so that's saying a lot. You know, the movie wasn't that bad looking back. The Royal Edition especially pissed many fans off, and they saw that this game being released a year later had content that seemed like it was supposed to be in the main game upon initial launch. From endgame content to the episode DLCs being already packed in with the game without downloading them, and just additional quality of life improvements ended up feeling like a major slap in the face for many players like myself, where we all went, Why the hell wasn't this in the original game to begin with, Square? I'm still salty about this very day, and it's been 5 freaking years. And with the most recent one to get this same treatment being Kingdom Hearts 3, that same level of saltiness is still within me the more I even speak about that Remind DLC, which, god damn it, that still feels like a massive fumble even today. That Remind DLC got the best of me when they announced it and had it released a year after Kingdom Hearts 3 release date, with new cutscenes for story elements, the data boss battles returning for gameplay value, and Skylight Kylan being fully explorable, which seeing all this and then looking at my time with Kingdom Hearts 3 proper, ended up feeling off, and that's not something a DLC is supposed to do, which makes this into a good segue to talk about the BS that Nintendo has been pulling off with their DLCs as well. Man, I always knew something was off with Mario since Odyssey released. Now, Nintendo has only been doing this since the Wii U era as best as I can remember it, but no doubt it's been a lingering idea for them in the Switch era of today, especially with our now fix-it-later with DLC approach being in high gear with the past few first-party releases. Of course, these are more with multiplayer games and these DLCs are free, thank god, but it's still worth mentioning this because these patches and free DLC updates shouldn't be a thing in the first place if Nintendo just take their time and have it all packaged upon its initial release. For example, Mario Strikers Battle League and Mario Tennis Aces were games that people were very excited to get their hands on, seeing that these were the next generation of Mario sports games. With Battle League in particular, everyone on the internet were rock hard at the idea that finally, a beloved sports IP with Mario characters is back and having a nice graphical overall this time around. And then hindsight became 2020 like it always does. By the time these games got closer and closer to release and their overview trailers were presented, it was there that everyone began to realize that these games felt incomplete, with a limited roster and a lackluster gameplay presentation paired with the idea that, I don't know, a missing f***ing puzzle piece is right there in the center of it all is what ultimately made these games go from hype to just throwing it down the drain whenever possible. And mind you, I didn't even talk about Mario Golf Super Rush 2. Like, that game was supposed to have Pauline from the start of the game. How do they fumble that one hard? Look, okay, the cases with these may seem rather small when compared to the bigger things that are going on in the gaming industry. I totally understand that. I'm fine with you to the very end with that take right there. But when you think about it in actuality, this really isn't as small as you think that it is. It's much bigger than that. You see, if games like these are getting these treatments of the fix-it-later approach, then that means that there is less of a possibility for better DLC opportunities to arrive for IPs that desperately need it the most and lose the luster of what DLCs are initially there for since the start, thus resulting in mediocre-ass games that could easily just be fixed down the line. Games like Mario Party Superstars, for example, is one multiplayer game that desperately needs a DLC expansion with new boards and characters for it to feel more rewarding to play and add variety to experience. This is where I think DLC is supposed to go, and not just a quick update about adding Birdo into Battle League where she was supposed to be there in the first place. She's literally been in almost every single lineup since day one. How did you also fumble this one hard, Nintendo? And this is why I'm never becoming a Nintendo ambassador. But wait! Here's where I think you might throw in a rebuttal or two where you might say, but isn't Mario Superstars in the same category as Battle League? In which case you raise a good question for someone dumb like me to answer. In actuality, the comparison of Superstars getting DLC would be the same as when Mario Kart 8 Deluxe got the Booster Pack DLC. Superstars when released, like Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, were already jam-packed games with tons of content to explore and experiences as is, so the price tag seemed rather justifiable because these games can deliver high quality time without feeling empty or boring, like let's say Super Mario Party. Mario Kart 8 in particular is a very important conversation in this regard because as we saw how massive the game was already, especially being a portable Wii U game with all of its DLC thrown into it for full price, already told you that this game was definitive. So even if you did decide to buy the DLC or not, you are still getting what you bargained for. Hell, Smash Ultimate is another good example of this because Sakurai made sure to make this game the literal ultimate experience, with throwing all the DLC characters and past characters of the previous games thrown into one full price title and just let the people play and replay the characters they grew up with for hours and hours, especially with that added content of World of Light and the standard rule sets you get to use. Add the 11 fighters into the mix that released within the past 2 years and that price tag just feels as rewarding and doesn't negate the feeling of being satisfied satisfied when you initially bought the game at your local GameStop. And if we're really feeling frisky here, you can argue Pokemon Sword and Shield in that regard too. Now hear me out with this one. We all know already that Pokemon Sword and Shield get as much bad rep already, being heavily considered universally as mediocre Pokemon games. Not bad, mediocre. Let's make sure to emphasize that first before you start commenting away here or you do your daily runs on Twitter. Regardless of that take, these games surprisingly felt full in content and did what every Pokemon game does in terms of delivering a new region to explore, Pokemon to catch and train, and just something new and refreshing for the typical holiday season Pokemon usually releases on. The only thing that was really mediocre was its post-game content and graphics not being suited for the Nintendo Switch of all things. So what did Pokemon Company and Game Freak do as a response to this? Damn, they showed us they could fuck. With the Sword and Shield expansion pass, it did what any expansion pass does to a game, and that's simply to add more content and story elements to an already enriched experience. And if you are arguing that the Royal Edition or the Remind DLC did that to some capacity, then you are mistakenly wrong, but I do understand why your line of reasoning went there to begin with. And don't get me started with re-releases and definitive editions and remakes, because that's like a whole minefield of situations and stuff that just, it needs its own video someday, alright? Someday. While Sword and Shield had the whole National Dex drama looking back, the roster that Galar provided still felt deserved, and 300 plus Pokemon is no small thing, mind you. That and seeing what the expansion pass offered demonstrates that this was indeed the DLC to add more content to an already existing canon and ensuring a more lively experience. Meanwhile, the Remind DLC and the Final Fantasy XV Royal Edition felt like added content that didn't make the cut in the end and was supposed to be in the full release package upon initial release. Other prime examples of this style of DLC is the Breath of the Wild expansion pass, giving us the champion trials and more additional story content that provided a glimpse of Link's past, as well as what to expect for the upcoming sequel, Tears of the Kingdom. This added something of an extension to what Breath of the Wild already provided, while ensuring new events and gameplay to look forward to, such as riding this awesome ass motorcycle. And currently with Xenoblade Chronicles 3 having its very own expansion pass as well, with new characters and side quests to explore and potential story epilogue and DLC to help add more lore surrounding this latest open world adventure. Or Resident Evil 2 Remake giving us what if scenarios of certain characters surviving Raccoon City, adding more situational experiences while adding some level of difficulty of each of them to test your survival horror skills as well. And hell, by extension too, you might as well throw the Evil Within's DLC ended up being a whole ass trilogy where we saw Nicole Kidman's perspective of the events of the first game and how it led to the sequel later on. These were massively praised from what I remembered and really added a B scenario and what was considered an attempt of reviving the survival horror genre at the time. Sorry Resident Evil 7, but you know that's true. Well, adding this to the list of games to review now. And of course, you can't forget about the Cuphead DLC called The Delicious Last Course, where we visit a new island to explore with a new galore of stages and bosses to get your ass whipped a new one, as well as play as Miss Chalice for the very first time. Man, this right here is what truly makes The Delicious Last Course stand out in my opinion. That and re-experience a platforming difficulty that makes Cuphead one of the hardest platformers to date. Man, these games told me what it means to be an adult. God damn it! But these are the DLCs that feel rewarding to purchase and have as an extension to an already fulfilling game. And with that approach being murky in the waters now that every game out there is being treated with the modern DLC fix-it-later method, it makes these purchases rather dubious for some more so than ever before. Sure, expansion passes can also fall into the same category as a fix-it-later in terms of adding more content to experience, but in reality, it's not the same as asking for more while being satisfied with what the original content presented, rather than asking for something that was supposed to be in the game since launch day, and now you're practically selling your soul to these companies so you can say, but now my 2B comes in a kimono. And that's where they get you. It's like if more of these updates and DLCs are being thrown in these games, the less the value of the DLC itself gets, and it almost makes these full price games feel like they're mobile games too. And when a game is compared to that, oh, you know that as a game publisher, developer, you done screw yourself over big time. What I mean by this is that the constant update of a game that involves adding new content and allowing you things that weren't in the game to begin with makes this era of gaming feel like we're buying higher quality mobile games, or at the very worst a live service game, which to put in the context of Nintendo, it's not surprising that they feel this way now with some of their recurrent releases. Again, I know this is mostly with multiplayer stuff, but still hang on to this thread for me, will you? For a brief time, Nintendo has held onto the mobile gaming market with many releases of games and extensions of previous IPs, such as Super Mario Run being a lesser version of a Mario Bros, or Mario Kart Tour being a lesser version of a Mario Kart game, or Fire Emblem Heroes where it's Well, you kinda get my point here. These games' qualities are great for a mobile game, sure, but because of their existence is where I think I can find the fault in Nintendo's line of thinking when it comes to handling their actual price games. If these mobile games are being updated on a monthly to yearly basis, then who's to say that their latest title won't get the same treatment, which time and time again, we've seen in the multiplayer first-party titles. Now, I could be reaching for an argument here, but hey, that's just my opinion. Note, my opinion. Point being, the usage of DLC is a double-edged sword that every developer, big or small, must take into major consideration of implementing in their games. Every developer, when making a game and have the prospects of DLC for it down the line, should ask themselves how much additional content should be provided to their game, while not making it feel like it's an extension to fix something they missed out upon release, but instead something extra and new that just feels as exciting. With that in mind as well, we should have to start paying more attention to these upcoming DLCs and see if they are indeed expanding the story and gameplay without affecting its original content. After all, a DLC is all but enhancing the quality of life experience the game already provided at launch and just adding something new and extra on top of that. Something that feels more of a luxury than it is a liability, if you kinda catch my drift here. Be that as it may, this video isn't just to raise my fist and call out all DLCs out there in the world, because to be honest here, you still feel pretty excited for when a game releases something extra. And in the case of what to expect in 2023, that mentality is no different when for Sonic Frontiers, a game heavily praised by all of the Sonic fandom, God bless, is getting massive DLC at the price of none that allows more replayability and more to expect from an already beefy game. There's gonna be DLC for Mario & Rabbids Sparks of Hope, with Rayman finally being playable after so many years, and of course the potential hopes for an expansion pass on Pokemon Scarlet and Violet should be things worth being hyped about in the DLC realm as far as I'm aware. We only just started the year after all, goddamn. Plus, DLCs aren't something inherently wrong at the end of the day, and it is important to acknowledge their good work, but critique the bad practices of them as done here. They are there to add more for the player to experience, and honestly, who wouldn't want that despite having to make your wallet suffer for a good month or two? DLCs are gonna be DLCs, and I just want to express my feelings towards them at the end of the day, and hopefully not as ramble as hard as I did. Like, I know I script these videos and all that kind of stuff, but sometimes you really need to say the same thing over and over again to really stress that point across. And you do realize that I can also see on my analytics some parts of you guys skipping through my video. Like, I'm not that stupid. That all being said, now it's time for me to come to a close here, so thank you all so much for watching today's video. Keep supporting the content, especially if you are new. Love you all forever and always to 120. Stay safe and sexy out there. Be awesome. Peace out and take care. No, but seriously, where the hell is my wallet?